Well, good day. This is the midweek. This is sort of the midway point here between Palm Sunday and Easter Sunday. It's on Wednesday. And so today, I'm kind of, just when I'm doing this, hopefully I'll have this on by the end of the day, but I'm doing this kind of late. I've got to go to church here in a few minutes, so I'm going to try to do this one as quickly as possible, but still to cover everything, doing justice to it. And I'm inside the car again today. It's not raining or anything out, but it's just don't really. I said I didn't have a whole lot of time, and I'll just kind of set something up today, so you can see I'm still up here in the woods, kind of. But hopefully tomorrow and all, I do plan on being outside on the next ones that I'll do this with. But today I'm going to read from Matthew 26:26 and the verses following that. And it says, "And as they were eating," this is at what we commonly call the Last Supper, as they were eating, Jesus took bread and blessed it and brake it and gave it to his disciples and said, "Take, eat, this is my body." And he took the cup and gave thanks and gave it to them, saying, "Drink ye all of it. For this is my blood of the New Testament, which is shed for many for the remission of sins. But I say unto you, I will not drink henceforth of this fruit of the vine until that day when I drink it new with you in my Father's kingdom." We have the institution here of what we call the Lord's Supper. Sometimes we call it communion. Some places it's called the Eucharist, whatever we wish to call it. This is the first, shall we say, enactment of it when Jesus himself does it. And he does it with two elements, bread and wine. And he uses both of them as illustrations, which was a very common thing. Obviously, Jesus used parables to do that as well, but here he's using it on a much more personal level, talking about himself. It says, as they were eating, and it's worth noting he had just predicted the betrayal of Judas, what Judas was going to do. And it says, as they were eating, it says, he took bread, again, and blessed it, and brake it, and gave it to the disciples, and said, "Take, eat, this is my body." In other accounts, it says, "This is my body, which is broken for you." But it doesn't say it here in Matthew, but it's sort of implied because he broke it. He blessed it, and then he broke it. And then but he does say, he says, he took the cup and gave thanks and gave it to them, saying, "Drink ye all of it." He says, "For this is my blood of the new covenant, of the New Testament, which is shed for many for the remission of sins." He says, of this one, he does say that this is his blood, which is shed for many for the remission of sins. Now, when we talk about in the Bible, when it speaks of shedding of blood, it doesn't mean just like cutting yourself and bleeding something out, then bandaging it up or something, and then the bloodshed sort of stops. When we say bloodshed, it literally means death. Or I should say, I guess it figuratively means death. It means the idea of blood being shed out to the point of death. And so he says, "This is my," "this is my blood of the New Testament, which is shed for many for the remission of sins." He's saying, he's saying here, this is my blood which is shed to the point of death. The idea here is that he's going to die. He's talking about death. Maybe that struck them as odd because they're still not really expecting that. But whatever, they often didn't question what he said, even if they didn't understand it. But he's telling them he's going to die. His body, the blood that's mentioned here, and he says that what it is you've seen in front of you here, the body, the blood, obviously that's circulating through it. He says this was what it was for. This was the purpose. He doesn't say it here to them, but it's said in other places. Of course, this was his purpose. I read it a few days ago. It's in Mark chapter 10. It's also in Matthew chapter 20, where he says, "The Son of Man did not come to be ministered unto, but to minister, and to give his life as a ransom for many." So he's told them this before, that he was coming to die, to give his life. And he tells them that here again, that that's what he's going to do. And he gives them this, we call it an ordinance in some places. Some people call it a sacrament, but he gives them this ceremony, if we want to call it that they, we know that they continue to enact, because we know Paul is doing it in 1 Corinthians, or the church at Corinth is doing it, and Paul writes them about it in 1 Corinthians. So we know that the Lord's Supper was continually being observed. And he gives them this for them to always remember it, as a way to remember it. And also, and even when Paul says it's a way to proclaim it, in the sense of proclaiming the death of Christ and what happened. But he doesn't just, you'll notice he does not say that it's, and when he talks about the shedding of his blood, the giving of his life, it's not done as an accident. It's not a tragedy, so to speak, in the sense of it was something that wasn't planned or something that just came upon them and surprised them or that sort of thing. He said, "This is my blood, which is shed for many, for the remission of sins." There was a purpose to his death. This was, like I say, it was not a accident, wasn't a tragedy, wasn't something unexpected. Jesus is spoken of as, in fact, let me read it, because one of the disciples there obviously was Peter, and this is something Peter himself says a few years later when he's writing his epistle, or his first epistle. And he says this, well, let me read it. It's 1 Peter 1:18. He says, "For as much as you know that you were not redeemed with corruptible things as silver and gold from your vain conversation received by the tradition from your fathers, but with the precious blood of Christ, as a lamb without blemish and without spot, who was verily foreordained before the foundation of the world, but was manifest in these last times for you." So he says you weren't redeemed with expensive things like silver and gold, any of the fancy things, but with the precious blood of Christ, as a lamb without spot or blemish. He said, who was foreordained before the foundation of the world. In other words, this was something that was planned long, long, long before we were here. Even before the disciples were here, before Adam and Eve had even sinned, this was planned. And it was planned, that was the reason. The blood was shed for many. And it means in the place of many, as a substitute for the remission of sins. In other words, for sins to be forgiven. That was the reason that he came to die. And he gave us this memorial of the Lord's Supper in order to celebrate it and to remember that and to proclaim it. Paul says, until the Lord comes. And that's kind of the next thing he says, "But I say unto you, I will not drink henceforth of this fruit of the vine until that day when I drink it new with you in my Father's kingdom." No more will he celebrate this. They're going to drink it, but he's not drinking wine anymore. He won't drink it again until he drinks it anew, he says, in the kingdom of God with them. So he gives them a promise that his death is not going to be the end of it, that they will be something, there is something greater coming, and it will be that time in the kingdom. So that's also a good thing to remember. As I said, Paul says you proclaim his death until he comes. That we know that while what happened on the cross in his death, but that will not be the end of it, because he will come back, and he will be able to drink it one day anew with them in the kingdom. So it's something we can look back to as far as the cross, but also look forward to as far as what's going to happen in the kingdom of God one day. So that was the devotion for today, to focus on the Lord's Supper. Many people will celebrate that during different points of this week. Just a sort of a reminder of what it commemorates and what it tells us. So I hope everybody's having a good day and a blessed day and a blessed week. And I'll hopefully we'll be back tomorrow with another one of these for you. So until then, have a blessed time, blessed day, and I will see you then.